As you know, injured workers need a lot of resources to help them recover, whether those are financial, emotional, social, or vocational. Combing a wealth of resources and staying up to date on changes allows case managers to issue compensation to these workers. As a client many years ago, I had a very positive experience with WCC. This included making a full recovery and returning to my date of accident job. Not all clients are as lucky as me, and in many ways, I am an anomaly. Given your work with clients, I hope you'll find my accident story inspiring. It was a warm, sunny day on the highway leaving Fort Smith. I had just started a job with the college and was on duty travel after meeting with my supervisor at the campus. It was a long drive on a washboard gravel road in the middle of nowhere in an unfamiliar vehicle, a near deadly combination. Ironically, just 2 weeks before, I had asked my supervisor to pay for a safe driving on gravel roads course. No such course was available. Unable to recall the accident, I don't know exactly what happened. This truck was loaded with heavy boxes and rolled several times. I was found hanging upside down from my seatbelt, bleeding profusely and semi-conscious. I had a suspected spinal fracture, a closed skull fracture, and fluid coming from my eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Passers-by apparently had to drive back to town to call for help. There was no cell service. Thankfully, some well-trained volunteer firefighters from Hay River rescued me. They used the jaws of life to get me out of the vehicle. They carefully put me on a spinal board to helicopter me to Hay River. They later said it was one of the most physically and emotionally demanding rescues they'd ever made. In Hay River, they learned that I had a broken neck and a severe brain injury. They immediately medevaced me to the University of Alberta. Soon after, I was put into a halo traction brace since my head, or my neck rather, could not withstand the weight of my head. I had a high cervical spinal fracture in C2 at the odontoid process. One day, I would learn how incredibly lucky I am to be alive and not paralyzed. At U of A, my broken collarbone was minor compared to the other injuries. My family, then in Saskatchewan, traveled to Edmonton to see me. My mom advocated for U of A's Dr. Fox not to fuse my neck with bone from my hip. This would prevent me from ever turning my head again. Luckily, her efforts were successful. Then they put me into a medically induced coma to reduce my brain swelling. Apparently, my supervisor and others had come to see me only to be met with my vacant eyes. After 4 weeks, my family had WSCC fly me to Saskatoon, where they were. And there I spent a month in ICU in the Royal University Hospital. I vaguely recall the terrifying flight while strapped to a bed. My only memory of being in Edmonton was like a foggy dream. I could see my former students from Kikiza Lake crying at my bedside, and I later learned that that was true. While first in hospital in Saskatoon, I needed to be fed, toileted, and bathed. I was utterly dependent. One nurse reportedly put a buttered bun in my hand, forgetting that I couldn't move my arms to feed myself. So I'm not sure how long I sat there like that. I was very glad to have my family there helping me. They would push me in the wheelchair in the warm sun and even bring me fresh fruit. Then came a heart-wrenching moment. I got the first glimpse of myself in a mirror. I was pale, gaunt, and had a 12-pound steel frame screwed through my forehead and into my skull. I looked like Frankenstein. To overcome the shock, I focused on making progress in rehab, and each day got better. Medications were another hard part of recovery. When you're put on anti-seizure and antidepressant medication just in case, it leaves you sweaty and shaky and an emotional roller coaster. Ironically, a young nurse brought me in a radio to calm me down, and she left it on the oldies station. A somber voice came on and announced that it was the anniversary of Elvis Presley's death, asking, "Where were you when Elvis died?" I was struck with sadness. I broke down in tears. My mother was stunned to find me crying over her idol. Thankfully, my mom successfully lobbied for me to be taken off all non-essential medications. Immediately, all side effects stopped. After a month, I was moved to the Rehabilitation ward of Saskatoon City Hospital, the hospital I was born in. It was there that I regained much of my mobility and independence. One nice nurse, Lynn, made 2 wishes come true. She arranged a private shower in a plastic wheelchair, and she made me some hot toast with peanut butter. I was so grateful. After 3 months in hospital, I was released to live with my mom. I had a home care worker, rode the handy bus to physio, and relearned keyboarding and writing skills. After transitioning from the walker to the wheelchair to the transfer belt, I gradually began to walk on my own again. The clouds were lifting, and I started to see my old life returning. But some hospital staff remained discouraging, saying, "Well, you probably have cognitive deficits from the head injury," dampening my dream of one day completing a master's degree. My defiant thought was, "Watch me." Then I got some bad news. My monthly x-ray revealed my vertebra had moved a few millimeters. I'd need surgery to stabilize my neck, likely the feared Fox fusion. Plus, if I fell on ice before the surgery, I'd be paralyzed forever from the neck down. Distraught and housebound, I frantically researched options online. Maybe WSCC could find a better surgery elsewhere. I begged my neurosurgeon to find another solution. He found an orthopedic surgeon at the Foothills Hospital in Calgary who would put a long odontoid peg in my neck instead. Thankfully, the spinal surgery worked. I no longer felt like a bobblehead doll. But I had to wear a hard plastic neck brace like this 24/7 for the next 6 months. And later, I endured plastic surgeries for scar revision, including at the Misericordia Hospital in Edmonton. 1 year and 1 week later, I finally returned to work. WSCC even bought me a very supportive office chair, which probably cost more than my first car in the 1980s. Expectations weren't high for my work performance in a challenging role. However, I was described as a very effective programs manager with 13 staff across 2 regions. I loved that job and the people I worked with, but I decided not to continue in the position, fearing another accident while regularly traveling on gravel roads and in bush plains for work. And later, I knew I'd made the right decision after hearing of similar accidents involving my successor and other government employees in the region. Since my accident, I've had some incredible flashback moments, which I want to share with you. 6 years after my accident, I was working up at a mine site, and I met a former nurse there. And she asked if I'd ever been in the Hay River Hospital. And I laughed only once after an MBA. She vividly recalled seeing both the fear and the courage in my eyes, even though I could only blink to communicate. She said that Dr. Guthrie, the physician on duty, uncharacteristically asked the nursing staff to pray for me, which they did. What a chance happening meeting her there. 8 years after my accident, I was preparing to realize my dream of studying for a master's degree on a scholarship. I still worried about potential learning and memory problems, however. Yet Dr. Brabancic, the neuropsychologist who'd done my cognitive assessment, was positive I'd make a full recovery. While packing up my house, I found her business card and called her. She was thrilled with my happy update. 12 years after my accident, Marion, a friend from the NWT, posted something on Facebook. It got a response from Vince McKay, the chief firefighter from the crew that had rescued me. Later that year, he and I reconnected over lunch in Edmonton. With my work accident, I'm especially grateful to the firefighters pictured here, along with the many competent healthcare workers who took great care of me when I needed it the most. I'm thankful for my family who advocated for me, helped me with everything, and kept my spirits up. Of course, I'm also very grateful for WSCC's support, especially when I had rent, student loan payments, and car payments coming out of my bank account while I was paralyzed in the hospital. Thankfully, every province and territory has a workers' compensation system, which supports people like me who are hurt at work. 20 years later, I proudly began working with the Advisor Office for Alberta Workers' Compensation. Each client has a unique story, and unlike many, mine had a miraculous ending. Every day, workers' compensation staff like you make a difference in the lives of clients who simply dream of being able to walk along the beach again. As a former client, I appreciate your help to regain my independence and return to work. Masicho, Juana, thank you.